Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Eruvin Daf discusses a situation in which you have a Sefer Kodesh, a scroll that has unrolled, and part of it is resting in Rosh Hashanah, and part of it is resting in your hand. Now the issue here is that Midaraisa, there's no problem to roll it back up because you're still holding it. It's not considered to be moving an object from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah where you are. The concern is that if we allow you to do that, we have Exer, we're afraid that even if it's dropped from your hand and it's completely in Rosh Hashanah, you may come to roll it up. On the other hand, if you just leave it the way it is, it's a bizayon, it's a disgrace to a Sefer Kodesh. So we'll have to learn to balance those two concerns. The Gemara will analyze this Mishnah line by line, and it's three opinions. Then the Gemara will bring another Mishnah towards the end of the Daf, which discusses a windowsill outside a house, when it's allowed to be used by the people in the house, when it's considered Rosh Hashanah, when it's considered Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so we saw in our Mishnah two cases about a Sefer Kodesh that's unrolled. One is where the guy who's holding one end is sitting on the threshold of his house, and the other one is where he's sitting on the roof and it's dangling down the side of the roof. So as far as the threshold case, the Mishnah didn't give opinions. The Mishnah just said the halacha is you're allowed to roll it back up. As far as the hanging off the roof, the Mishnah gave three opinions. The Tanakama says you're only allowed to roll it up if the end is not within 10 tvachim of the ground. Rabbi Huda said you're allowed to roll it up as long as it's not reaching the ground. And Rabbi Shimon said even if it is reaching the ground, no matter where it is, you're allowed to roll it up. So the Gemara is first bothered by what's the first case. The first case just brings one halacha. You're allowed to roll it up. The guy is sitting on the threshold and it's rolled out. Now what's going on? He's sitting on a threshold that's Rosh Hashanah and it's rolled out into Rosh Hashanah. Why are we just allowing him to roll it up? You should have the same three opinions as before. Why are we just going with the last opinion, which is that you're allowed to, no matter where it is? You should have the same concern. Hare, you're sitting in Rosh Hashanah and it's rolled out into Rosh Hashanah, and if we allow you to roll it up, we should be afraid that you're going to end up rolling it up even if it dropped from your hand and it's not completely in Rosh Hashanah. So why would we here go only with the last opinion, which is Rabbi Shimon? So the Gemara is going to offer three approaches to this. First approach is Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda says, yes, this halacha is going only with Rabbi Shimon, and the other two opinions in the Mishnah would argue. They would say you're not allowed to roll it up. That's his approach. Rabbah says that a threshold is different. A threshold many people walk on. There was a tremendous bizayin. If it's hanging off the side of the roof, so it's hanging in the air, not the end of the world, but the threshold, everybody walks. There we're more concerned about the bizayin to the Kisvei HaKodesh that are lying there, and we would say that everybody would agree. All three opinions in the Mishnah would say even though one end is in Rosh Hashanah and the other end is in Rosh Hashanah, you're allowed to roll it all the way up since you're still holding one end. Now, Abaye says a different pshat, but as a hakdama to his pshat, he says first of all there's a brisa, which adds details to this Mishnah. And the brisa says that it depends when it's unrolled from the threshold that you're sitting on, it's unrolled into Rosh Hashanah, how far away does it extend throughout Rosh Hashanah? If it's all within 4 amos, then you're allowed to roll it up. If, however, it's unrolled to further than 4 amos, then you're not allowed to roll it up. Says Abaye, why should that be? Why should there be a difference between 4 amos and not 4 amos? Says Abaye, it must be what's going on here is as follows. We're not talking about where the threshold that you're sitting on is Rosh Hashanah. The threshold that you're sitting on is a karmelis. Okay, it's not 10 tvachim high. Maybe 4 tvachim wide, but it's not 10 tvachim high. Therefore, you're sitting in a karmelis. It's unrolled into Rosh Hashanah. Behind you, the house that's behind you, inside, behind the threshold, that's Rosh Hashanah. So, says Abaye as follows. If it's rolled more than 4 amos, so then if it drops from your hand, part of it is more than 4 amos away from you. If you would pick that up and roll it now, that would be an issur d'oraisa because you would be rolling it 4 amos, you'd be moving it a distance of 4 amos within the Rosh Hashanah. If, however, it's not rolled a length of 4 amos, then even if it drops from your hand, all you'd be doing is transferring it from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, that's why the brisa has a difference. In the case of Rosh Hashanah, in the case where it's unrolled more than 4 amos, there's a potential issur d'oraisa happening here. We do say exer. In the case where it's a Rosh Hashanah, in the case where you're sitting in Carmelis, and it's less than 4 amos rolled out, then it's less of a problem. It's only a potential issur d'Rabbanan, and therefore we let you roll it up. Says Abaye, now you understand why this is different than the other three opinions in the Mishnah, which are talking about the case of where it's rolling off a roof. Over there, it's hanging from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. Here, it's only a karmelis to Rosh Hashanah, and that's why you're allowed to roll it. Our Mishnah is discussing where it's less than 4 amos stretched out, and there's no concern of ever getting to an issur d'oraisa. Now, the Gemara doesn't let this slide so quickly. The Gemara has a kasha on this. The Gemara says, so hold on a second. You said there's a Rishus Yachid behind you, right? So if we're concerned that he may roll it up even if it dropped from his hand, so you told me there's no potential issue deraisa as long as it's not unrolled more than 4 amas, but he still may pick it up and bring it into the house. That would be from Rishus Harabim across the threshold, which is a Carmelist, into Rishus Yachid, and that would be an issue deraisa. So we should be concerned of that, and therefore we should not allow him to roll it up at all if that's your case. Not only that, don't tell me that it's not a problem because he's going to be passing across the threshold, which is a Carmelist, and therefore it's not an issue deraisa to go from Rishus Harabim across a Carmelist into Rishus Yachid. That's not true. We have a clear statement that we've seen before, name of Rava, that if you're carrying something from Rishus Harabim to a Rishus Yachid, even if you hold it up in the air above 10 tefachim, which means that it's in a makom petur, so it's passing through a place which is not a Rishus Harabim and not a Rishus Yachid, so still you're violating the deraisa by carrying it from Rishus Harabim to a Rishus Yachid. So in this case, it would also be an issue deraisa, would you come to carry the object, the sefer, from the Rishus Harabim across the threshold, which is a Carmelist, into a Rishus Yachid. So we should still make the gzeira. So Gemara says a few answers. Either we're referring to where the threshold is very long, and it's a very long Carmelist. By the time you get to the Rishus Yachid, you'll remember already that you can't carry. So therefore we're not concerned about that. The other possibility over here is that since you're holding a Sefer Kodesh, the assumption is that you're going to stop and read from it. People who hold Svarim and carry them usually stop and learn. So you'll probably stop and learn in the threshold, then you'll be stopping in a Carmelist. If you stop walking, then your Akira is in Rishus Harabim. You do a Hanacha in the Carmelist when you stop walking, and then you do another Akira and Hanacha from the Carmelist to Rishus Yachid, and there won't be any Issa Deraisa there, therefore we don't have to make Gzeira. Gemara says, but hold on a second, that's not so good, because maybe you'll do your reading when you're still in Rishus Harabim, and once you get to the Carmelist, you'll just pass right through the Carmelist. So Gemara says, okay, this must be then Ben Azai's opinion. That's my other answer. This is Ben Azai who says that as long as you're walking, it's still counted as if you stopped. So if you walk through the Carmelist, it's counted as if you stopped in the Carmelist, and therefore there's no Isser D'Oraisa carrying from Rishus Harabim, walking through a Carmelist to Rishus Yachid, because it's counted as if you stopped there. The Gemara says, even though that's true, still what happens, maybe the guy will throw it from Rishus Harabim straight through to Rishus Yachid across the Carmelist itself. That the Gemara says, obviously we're holding that you're not allowed to throw Sifrei Kodesh, that's not too much of a stretch. Okay, the Gemara now goes to the case where somebody was sitting and reading the Sefer on the roof. This is in the Mishnah. He dropped one end and it rolled down the side of the building, and now it's hanging down to the ground. So we had seen 3 opinions. The Tanakama said as long as it's above 10 tvachim from the ground, he's allowed to roll it up. Within 10 tvachim, he's not. Rabbi Yehuda said as long as it's not touching the ground, he's allowed to roll it up. And Rabbi Shimon said even if it's on the ground, he's allowed to roll it up. So the Tanakhama said that if you can't roll it up, for example, if it's less than 10 tvachim from the ground, then you just have to turn it so that the letters are facing inwards, not exposed, and leave it like that. So Gemara asked, one second, when we saw halacha, you're not allowed to just leave a sefer open. Let's say you're a sefer and you're writing a sefer. You can't just leave it open to protect it from the dust. You have to actually cover it with a cloth. So here also you should cover it with a cloth. So the Gemara says, listen, you cover it with a cloth where you can. Here you can't. If the issue is that you don't have a cloth, or if you can't halachically lower a cloth, that would be Aser al Tzolchos Shabbos. Okay, now the Gemara wants to understand exactly how this machlokes works. We have, within the zone of less than 10 tefachim, but still in the air, we end up having a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Tanakama says you're not allowed to roll it up, Rabbi Yehuda says you are. The Gemara wants to understand why. So the Gemara, first of all, says it doesn't really make sense. Something which is hanging in the air is not called resting in the rishus that it's in. The halacha is that you're only considered to be in Rishus Harabim if you're resting in Rishus Harabim. Something that's hanging in the air is not considered resting in the Rishus Harabim. So why does the Tanakhama have a problem with this? So Gemara says we're talking about where it is at rest. It's a slanted wall, and therefore the scroll is lying on the wall. The wall is not vertical, it's slanted. So Gemara says, well, then what's the problem with Rabbi Yehuda? Why does Rabbi Yehuda allow it? So the Gemara answers, you have to put in words here, and you have to have 2 cases in the Tanakhama. And therefore he'll be saying the halacha as follows. He'll be saying that as long as it's a slanted roof, then you're not allowed to roll it up as long as it's within 10 tvachim of the ground. If it's not a slanted roof, though, if it's straight and it's hanging, then you're allowed to roll it up unless it's within 3 tvachim on the ground, and that's what Rabbi Yehuda argues on. Now what's that, machlokes? That we understand. The Tanakhama says even if it's hanging, it's within 3 tvachim of the ground, it's lavud, and then halachically it's considered to be resting on the ground, and therefore you can't roll it up because it's considered resting on the ground in Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yehuda says no, considered resting is not enough. It has to be sitting on something. Halachically resting is not enough of a chashuv landing space to be considered an object in Rosh Hashanah. It has to actually be on something in Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara asks, well, one second, that exact halacha is a statement of Rava. Rava had said that, like we're quoting Rabbi Yehuda over here, that it has to be that it's actually resting on something. Love it is not enough. So now it comes out that Rava said something, which is a machlekes tanaim lefidus. Which is, you're right, it's a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually say that this entire back and forth here is really all within Rabbi Yehuda. There aren't three opinions in the Mishnah, there are two. Tanakama doesn't exist. It's all Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying that as long as it's a slanted wall, then it's a problem if it stretches to within 10 tvachim of the ground, because it's resting on the wall. If it's not a slanted wall, then it has to within 3 tvachim of the ground. Actually, even further, all the way to within a hair of the ground, as long as it's not resting on the ground. It's not considered to be at rest in Rosh Hashanah, and therefore it's okay. And it all fits with the statement of Rava. Okay, now the Gemara gets to the next Mishnah, which discusses a windowsill. This is a windowsill. It's like a board that sticks out from the window, from the bottom of the window, and it's on the outside of the house, and it sticks out into the airspace next to the house. The Mishnah will discuss if it's a Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara will discuss if it's a Rosh Hashanah. But the Mishnah says that the people who live in the house are allowed to use the windowsill. They're allowed to put objects on the windowsill itself. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know, this windowsill is sticking into what Rishos? Rishos Yachid or Rishos Rabim? If it's a Rishos Yachid, what's the problem? Why do we need a Mishnah about this? It's a windowsill in a Rishos Yachid, next to a house that's a Rishos Yachid. Of course you can put things on the windowsill, why not? Elamai, it's a Rishos Rabim, so then why aren't we afraid that things are going to fall off the little windowsill, and then you come pick them up and carry them back into the house or put them back on the windowsill? And that's very similar to our Gzeira in our last Mishnah, then you shouldn't be allowed to do that. So Gemara says, we're talking about objects that you're going to place there are very breakable, so that if they fall off, they'll smash. And you don't have any concern, you come to bring them back in. Gemara brings a brisa that seems to say this straight out. It says you're allowed to put on the windowsill, you're allowed to put plates, bowls, cups, and bottles, and things like that. And the implication seems to be because they're going to break, you don't have to worry they come to pick them up. Now this Mishnah adds something which is a little funny. Mishnah says you're allowed to use the entire wall. Machlokes Rishonim if that means the entire length of the wall or the entire height of the wall, up until 10 tfachim, not lower than 10 tfachim from the ground. And it says if you have 2 windowsills, the bottom one you're allowed to use the whole wall, the top one you're only allowed to use the part that's actually below the window. It's actually parallel to the window itself, but to the left and to the right of the window you can't. So Gemara says, well, why not? What could possibly be the problem? The Gemara's question is assuming as follows: if the windowsill is too small for things to stay on, and it's very likely that they'll fall off, so then you shouldn't be allowed to put anything on it. And if it's big enough that things won't fall off, so why do I care where you use it? So Gemara says like this: it's only big enough, including the actual floor of the window, meaning where it sticks out of the window, where the sill comes out of the window, there it's big enough, because you have enough space there combined with the thickness of the wall. At the bottom of the window, you have enough space there that things won't necessarily fall. If, however, to the left and to the right of that, things are much more likely to fall, and therefore, even if things can smash, we still make a gzeira. We don't want you to place objects over there that they'll certainly smash, they'll certainly fall. Not that you might come to pick them back up, but the concern is that it'll look like you threw it into Rosh Hashanah, because you put it on a sill, it's going to fall for 1 second. So the assumption is, the problem is that you take it from Rosh Hashanah and you put it somewhere where it's going to fall right away. It looks like you're literally throwing it into Rosh Hashanah, and that we know is forbidden for sure. Okay, we now have another Mishnah. This Mishnah is talking about somebody who's standing in Rosh Hashanah but moving something around in Rosh Hashanah, or standing in Rosh Hashanah and moving something around in Rosh Hashanah, moving it 4 amos in either of these 2 rishuyos. Now, obviously, as long as he's moving it less than 4 amos within Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, the fact that he's standing in Rosh Hashanah is not a problem deraisa, and vice versa. The same is true. If he's standing in Rosh Hashanah and he's moving in Rosh Hashanah, it's not a problem deraisa. The issue is, if you let him do that, he may end up bringing it into his Rosh where he is. That's a potential problem. So our Mishnah says we hold that it's mutter. We don't make that gzeira. We're not concerned that it'll come to bring it into his rishus, which would be an iser daraisa. Then the Mishnah adds that a person should not stand in Rishus Yachid and urinate into Rishus Harabim or vice versa, and he shouldn't spit into Rishus Harabim or vice versa, because he's transferring materials from one Rishus to another Rishus. Rabbi Yehuda says even if he has a ball of saliva which formed in his mouth, he can't walk in Rishus Harabim for Amos, because that will be carrying that ball of spit. Now, the Mishnah, the way we have it, says that you're allowed to move an object in a different Rishus than you. We don't make example that you bring it to you. That's the opinion of the Chachamim in a Mishnah on Daf Kuf Aleph. Reb Meir there argues and says you're not allowed to. So when Rav Chinan bar Shalmaya said over to Chia Barav, when he said over this Mishnah, instead of saying it our way, which is the opinion of the Chachamim, he said it the other way. He said it's forbidden, and that was the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So Rav said, what are you teaching him Rabbi Meir's version for? You should go with the Chachamim's version. So the Gemara explains that Rav Chanina thought that since the next coming up Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, so he thought that this Mishnah is connected to that Mishnah, and therefore it's all Rabbi Meir. That's why he said it over with Rabbi Meir's opinion. But it's not correct. That is Rabbi Meir, and this is actually the
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.